Welcome everybody to the Detonated YouTube channel. I'm DK Dynamite, and we have our Detonated co-owner Fajardi. How's it going, my friend?
It's doing good. It's doing good all around in general. You know, waiting for season 3 stuff. So while we're waiting, we're going to sort of do a little bit of a retrospective on this image here we found on Twitter. I believe it was posted by we don't know the exact name of the account, but it will be up on screen. Going through the entire collapse of Warzone, through every single phase and game and the problems that arose with it. So it should be a good little breakdown to this. And yeah, we were dying at this image because it's pretty funny. Because we've always had like sort of a mental, you know, a sort of post-it note on like what has happened. But this is like almost definitive of what sort of happened with Warzone. So it's going to be interesting.
I wanted to put something together like this at some point, and then I saw this and I'm like, okay, got to do a second channel reaction to just an entire recollection of Warzone as we know it, considering the 5-year anniversary is, I say, a mere hours away from when we're recording this. I think it's perfect timing. So let's start with the very beginning. 2020 Warzone Verdansk, as it says, was only lacking an increased health ranked mode with bans to uncompetitive weapons and equipment and proximity chat. W game. This stretches all the way into 2021 with Verdansk 84 during Cold War's life cycle. And just as a reminder, Warzone 1 launched during the second season of Modern Warfare 2019. So any initial thoughts on the origins of Warzone? Because obviously I think people have rose-tinted nostalgia goggles on when they talk about Warzone 1.
I agree.
Sure, it was great, but I think everyone was locked in their homes, and I think that's definitely what caused an uproar of support and a lot of love for the original Warzone. But how are you feeling?
Yeah, I was never really a massive fan of the original Warzone. I'm sure you weren't either, because you know you didn't really cover it too much. It was also really bad on console, which for the pretty much the entire duration of Warzone 1 you were on console for. I was lucky enough to be on PC starting with Black Ops Cold War, but Warzone was never anything really special to me. I think Blackout was still fresh in my mind back then. It only would have been a year or two after when that initially released. So I'm like, you know, Blackout, and I still believe Blackout is better to this day, but nothing really ever stood out to me with the original Warzone. But I do agree that, you know, I think there's probably a lot more problems now, but there was definitely a lot of problems back then that people just forget about. Like you mentioned, the rose-tinted glasses. People definitely forget about a massive amount of the issues that the game was facing. And if you do notice, an overarching issue at the top here does say cheaters as well. So that was also happening all the way back since the conception of the game. But
Yep.
Yeah, you know, proximity chat would have been awesome in Warzone 1. I think that would have led to a lot more funny moments. And you know, there was also, was there? Yeah, there wasn't a ranked mode, was there?
No, there was Iron Trials that I believe is mentioned somewhere here. Maybe it mentions it, but Iron Trials came out as like, I think maybe sort of as a stepping stone to the eventual ranked play we got. You know, it really felt like that mode was Raven and other studios testing the waters for a competitive Warzone experience. And that was really well received, if I'm not mistaken. And maybe I'm tripping here, but I believe Iron Trials was also on Rebirth, or was it just for Verdansk? I'd have to research that. But either way, that was well received. And I love that they mentioned cheaters here, because what I was going to bring up is, I think it was Cold War Season 2? When was the DMR meta? I think it started in Season 1, but stretched pretty far into maybe the second season.
I think it was nerfed pretty quick. I think it was just a brief moment in Season 1 with Mac 10 and DMR.
Well, I'm thinking back to whenever that was. I just know the cheating issue became really apparent during that meta. And I don't think was necessarily polished all that well, even after those weapons got nerfed. I think the cheating issue was still kind of happening alongside that. And it wasn't obviously till Caldera, which we'll get to when I think Ricochet got introduced. But before that, I mean, the PR around Warzone, as far as cheating goes, wasn't always great. I don't think it was ever really that great.
Yeah, it's never been good.
It's never been good. Yeah, it's always been problematic. But I would say for the most part, I also have to remind people that with Verdansk 84, lots of folks were upset we didn't get a brand new, fresh BR map that year.
Yeah, that's
obviously,
very important.
Euro Mountains was rumored for Cold War. That never happened. Nobody was jumping up with joy about Verdansk 84. I personally like the red doors, some of the POI updates. Nakatomi Plaza, favorite POI of all time. Absolutely loved a lot of the LTMs that dropped in Warzone during the Cold War cycle. I think I enjoyed that era more than like MW19 Warzone, which I know is certainly a hot take. But obviously, like you mentioned earlier, I also was on console during MW19. I didn't really appreciate that game or Warzone 1. Well, yeah, exactly. Oh, that's another big one. I really didn't appreciate that era at all until I moved to PC. And I'll point that out right now. Like, I had a different perspective playing on console, and it was hard for me to warm up to Modern Warfare-esque gameplay. I was much more in tune with Cold War, which obviously felt weird when then jumping into Warzone 1, which is not a different engine and played completely different. But yeah, also, no proc chat is crazy to think back at. That just wasn't a feature at all. Wow.
And to sort of finish up this first collection of Warzone 2020 to 2021, it did not feel like people widely accepted the Black Ops Cold War year of Warzone.
Yeah.
While it was happening, because you can go back to the podcast. There was all this complaining, like you said, people weren't really hot about Verdansk 84 at all. People wanted a brand new map. They were upset about that, and then they eventually would grow to regret that complaining when Warzone 2022 would come around with Warzone Caldera introducing the brand new map, and people immediately were like, we want Verdansk back, what the heck?
Yeah.
And there's 100% a podcast episode where we're talking about this, where like people were complaining that they didn't want Verdansk anymore, but as soon as the new map comes, they want to go back to Verdansk, and it's just
exactly.
It's just hilarious. But that kind of brings us to the Warzone 2022 year, if you want to go more into it.
Yeah, and I think that's also a perfect reflection of the COD cycle. I'm actually rocking a Rebirth Island t-shirt right now because I do want to mention Rebirth obviously was added during Season 1 of Cold War, brought us Resurgence. That was, I think, very well received for the most part. It's the most popular Resurgence map to date, and looking back at Warzone 1, I also do remember people were complaining that Rebirth was a kind of copy-paste of Alcatraz portals from Black Ops, but discuss it for a different time. 2022, the Caldera era. I mean, I just have to remind people, before I even read these, the Vanguard era was, God, man, it's so rough when all of it started. I mean, Vanguard launched in an okay state, and then with Season 1, the whole game broke. Caldera broke completely unplayable on consoles. They left, what was it, the what's his name from the Christmas event? Krampus. They left Krampus in the game. Dude, that was arguably, I think, one of the most broken moments for this current era of Call of Duty, and certainly Warzone. Things were just a complete mess. The map itself, I think, probably would have been a little bit more well-received if things had launched differently. But as it says here, attempted to remove loadouts, but they were thankfully brought back after Swag sacrificed a cheek. So that was, I believe, in reference to the Vanguard Royale mode, if I'm not mistaken, where you were only able to use Vanguard weaponry on Caldera. That was one playlist, though. That was never the only playlist in Caldera. So you were able to use loadouts, I believe. It just had to be Vanguard weaponry. You couldn't use MW or Cold War content. Like you said earlier, I think people were already frustrated with, I think, the wild meta across all these different titles because of all the weapons that were integrated.
Yeah, and obviously at this point, you're talking about, in Vanguard cycle, you have Modern Warfare 2019, which is IW engine, and then you have Black Ops Cold War, which is not, similar to IW, the Modern Warfare style at all. Then back to Vanguard, which is more akin to the Modern Warfare style. So you're kind of just, everything's held together with pretty much Band-Aids at this point, and Scotch tape. Nothing's really together that strong. And we saw that reflected where you couldn't even play Modern Warfare 2019 during Vanguard's year because it just completely broke. It was something with the download packs, the data packs. I remember it was a big thing. It was crazy. There was a glitch where it actually affected Black Ops Cold War Zombies, where you could teleport glitch with PhD slider. Unreal. Crazy. Unreal breaking. But yeah. And I think the loadout thing also has something to do with, I think they removed the free loadouts that dropped as well, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, that's really weird. They were already trying that in Warzone 1. Even though I'm a bigger fan of, I think, the randomized blackout style, like traditional BR. I know loadouts give Warzone its aura and its personality compared to other battle royales. I totally respect that. I don't think loadouts should be removed. I'm just shocked that they've attempted this many times over the years. But over 50% of the map was at an incline because of giant volcano in the middle. I'm just not a fan of that kind of design because it's like,
you essentially have squads fighting for control in that area, and then anybody else, coming up the hill, I mean, they're just getting sniped and picked off. So very odd. I also am not too big of a fan of giant maps if there's not these like redeploy balloons or some method of travel. I know Caldera had like a fast travel system, but the map was a bit too big for my liking. It was obviously bigger than Verdansk, so I already wasn't too fond of that big of a map. So I don't know. I was never too fond of Caldera, and it was completely broken on console. I didn't get my PC till pretty deep into the Vanguard cycle, towards the end, actually. So I didn't play too much Caldera on PC, but when I did, I appreciated it a little bit more, especially with FOV. Map was covered in bushes and vegetation. Yeah, I just, again, you're going back to like a big marketing point for Caldera being shallow water, right? Like there was shallow water you could walk through, you couldn't swim, and it was kind of silly. We're on an island and can't swim. That also was like, okay, that was odd.
Yeah, but I know there's been a few times where I've mentioned that on the podcast, definitely, where the insane marketing, like it was literally, I'm pretty sure it was a roadmap box.
I'm sure it was, yeah. A trophy system was there too.
Oh my god, yeah, in season 3. That one's a little more acceptable because it legit wasn't in the game, but like shallow water, like it's what does that even mean? Like that doesn't even really mean anything. At this point in Warzone, people are like, all right, we need a fresh start. This game's broken. No one really cared about Vanguard all too much, as a game as a whole. So people are looking for, some sort of fresh start. Marketing kicks off in one of the most earliest times in Call of Duty cycle history for Modern Warfare 2, and obviously people go berserk when all this stuff starts going on. People are like, Modern Warfare 2 is going to save Call of Duty. IW never fails. Modern Warfare 2019 is the best Call of Duty ever in existence. It was created by God himself. Jesus Christ came down and blessed it.
Yeah.
That's how people treated Modern Warfare 2019. And again, the Warzone community and probably a lot of the COD community came to regret those words very, very quickly. Once again, which is incredibly sad. And this is the largest, I'd say the largest area of complaints where people had for going into a Warzone 2.0 and now Mazrah in 2023.
I will follow up on something you mentioned, right? How people look at MW19 as a second coming of Christ. I remember pretty clearly, especially as a creator that didn't really cover much of MW19. I remember things being as dry as a desert before Season 2 and Warzone came around. I remember the multiplayer community was pretty discouraged. It was kind of just S&D that remained popular. Nobody was really excited over the multiplayer that was offered at launch with Modern Warfare 19. I think the DLC maps got a bit better, but Warzone really turned things around for MW19, just to remind people, at least during 2020. But Warzone 2.0, as they originally labeled it, and later overhauled and removed.
In Season 4.
Yeah, by Season 4, they changed the label here. Al Mazrah, arguably, in my opinion, the best map of the bunch here that we're going to be discussing. But when we played Warzone 2.0 at COD Next, and when it released with MW2 Season 1, they removed slide canceling, slowed down almost every animation, added AI to the BR mode, so you'd be running across DMZ-like enemies while playing BR. Oh my god. Introduced improved realism features like weapon inertia and strafing reticle sway, which disproportionately affected mouse and keyboard users. Ruined vehicle handling also made them more destructible and require fuel. Based the entirety of their new MW2 engine and improved realism features around DMZ and hopes of an extraction mode overthrowing the BR. New engine had very bad performance and optimization, arguably looked worse than previous titles on the MW19 engine. Ironically, finally ended up adding a ranked mode to the least competitive iteration of Warzone to date. That's a lot, but yeah, take it away. That's crazy.
There's a few things I disagree with this list, and it kind of gets a little bit Reddit when it starts to get to Warzone 2.0, I think, where the arguably looked worse than previous titles in MW 2019. I think that's all up to interpretation of sorts. I think MW2 looked better than MW 2019. MW 2019 always had this sort of like washed look to me. I don't know if you feel the same. It always has a washed feeling. But MW2, I was perfectly fine with the graphics of that. But yeah, there's a lot of things here where you're straying pretty far from what people originally liked with Warzone, even if there still was a lot of complaining back in the day. Where I think the biggest things for me personally, where it was the slowing down every animation.
Oh yeah.
And the where is it? The added AI to BR mode. I was kind of on the fence with that. I was a big fan of DMZ, so I didn't necessarily mind it, but I feel like they hit you as hard as they did in DMZ, which is absurdly overpowered. So they quickly remedied that maybe in a season or two, I believe, where they slowly just started taking out all these features and playing this game of catch up, which we've talked about before a lot in previous videos. But yeah, there's a lot of things here where you just got to think like, what were they thinking, you know? And
it's weird.
And I kind of liked the backpacks. I was sad to see the backpacks go with Warzone 4.0 or Black Ops 6. Because I think the backpacks were a good iteration, and I think that was something that was an evolution to the mode. But yeah, ruined vehicle handling is also that I feel like vehicle handling to this day is still just terrible. You know, the fuel thing I'm fine with. I think vehicles should require fuel. I don't mind that, but they were extremely, like, it felt like you were driving through glue the whole time. They were slow. The acceleration was terrible. You couldn't barely turn them. And that was very different from what the Warzone 1 cars were, where you could turn them on like a dime, and they were so fast and everything. So didn't really like that either. And I feel like that's still kind of present to this day, where I don't see a lot of people even using vehicles at all.
Oh no,
is that a personal thing? I rarely see people use vehicles
barely
at all anymore. And back in Verdansk, it was always, you were always putting the trophy system on the one car. I forget the car's name, but you're always putting the trophy system on the car, on the truck,
right,
whatever. You're always doing that, and now I never see it. It's insane.
Well, I'll go through this bit by bit. So, remove slide canceling. I understand the movement was broken in Modern Warfare 19, which translated over into Warzone. Hence why people were like, oh, I'm going to quickly write off Cold War and Vanguard because the movement's not one-to-one to MW19, and I play a lot of Warzone, so there was this big disconnect with that. MW3, I think, brought a good compromise for the movement, which we'll get to. But slowing down every animation, again, who is that appealing to? No one was happy with that. I guess casuals may have been, because it felt like I was lowering the skill gap if people had mastered certain movements and mechanics. I guess. AI doesn't belong in BR. Again, strongholds, black sites, that's adding a little bit too much fluff to basic BR or Resurgence. Don't need that. I think that was something that was shocking to see. I don't think I mentioned the Gulag here too, having that system 2v2. I mean, again, relying on another human being to try to get out of a Gulag that typically you'd only have to worry about yourself to get out of. That just didn't work. Again, questionable choices. And once again, kind of really screamed to everybody that they were fully set on working on DMZ, and at the last second, we're told, hey, by the way, you need to put BR on the same map. And what could they do? Just throw together some DMZ mechanics, change some things around, change some settings, and Warzone 2.0 is what we ended up getting. I don't know what the original plan would have been to keep Warzone 1 active through all this. I wonder, because clearly it was an afterthought to do Warzone on MW2's platform and Al Mazrah map. But vehicle handling, you said it best, rough. Improve realism. I just think there's one argument where you can say, hey, I prefer the art direction of games like BO3 or BO4, more colorful experiences. Then they're saying graphics look better, right? I think, like Fajardi just said, graphics are certainly best now, but art direction, you can argue, was superior back then, where things were a lot more colorful, popped out more, a little bit different when it comes to the style that a studio is going for. Optimization, could agree. Yeah, it was really rough at launch with Season 1. And then, yeah, you got ranked play in arguably one of the most controversial moments of Warzone history. So, yeah, and on top of that, you had to make Treyarch do it. So Treyarch has been very busy the last couple of years clutching up ranked modes for other studios' experiences. Yep. That's been rough to see, because I'm sure it took away time from what they wanted to do with Black Ops 6 and probably games beyond that. But clearly, like you said, they had to play catch-up most of the year, and I think by Season 4, they were really playing catch-up and saying, hey, let's just go back to Warzone. We're not going to call it 2.0, because you think you would call it 2.0 when you're building upon what you ended off with here, but you stripped all that away, started from scratch. I don't know how you can call that 2.0. It just never made sense to me at all. And so it took about a year and some change to get all the quality of life features back that were in Warzone 1. And I think by the end of Caldera's era, they really did have just about everything people were asking for, which all got stripped away with one update in Season 1 on W2. But then that leads us into what people have called 3.0, but it's not really 3.0. It's just Warzone. But I get what people are saying. Yeah. The Urzikstan Modern Warfare 3 era, if you want to take it away with these bullet points here.
Yeah, so I'd first like to say that I firmly believe that the Modern Warfare 3 era of Warzone was the best era of Warzone. And in terms of, you know, the content added, I'm a big Resurgence fan. I loved all the love that got, but the first point here, yeah, the partially brought back side canceling, but it did not reset tac sprint, which was the whole point of it. This is just kind of like a Reddit point. The slide canceling thing was a complete exploit where it would reset the tac sprint, so it's like whatever. And then there is almost all the other problems introduced with MW2 engine were still present. Reticle sway, bad vehicles, bad performance optimization. I can sort of see the bad vehicles and bad performance optimization, but I feel like a lot of the reticles and stuff were, you know, they fixed a lot of the visual clutter and stuff in MW3. So, you know, that sort of happened with that. And copy and pasted the same buildings all over the map. Yeah. Well, it's also tough because these are clearly thinking battle royale only in mind. Like, it's only talking about Urzikstan here, which I don't think Urzikstan is the best map ever. And even more so, it said the map lacked open areas of natural terrain and unique POIs with character, which I do agree with. I think Urzikstan was probably the blandest Warzone map we've gotten so far, and we've had it almost for the same amount of time as Verdansk.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Which that's absolutely insane. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that this iteration doesn't mention, which is more on the positive side. I think there was a lot of really good stuff, quality of life stuff throughout this year. Like I said, it was my personal favorite iteration of Warzone. There was a lot of good stuff. I believe the passive perks, like the perks you spawn in with, that was awesome, like overkill and some movement stuff. Ooh. That was very cool. And they took that away with Black Ops 6, which is a whole nother different thing. But lots of Resurgence content. You had Fortune's Keep. You had Rebirth Island get brought back. Just, I think there was a lot of content to dive into here. But then again, I also believe there was some of its problems. But you could see the Mr. Incredible phase. He's not incredibly uncanny now. He's a little bit better. He's gotten better, which is good.
Sure. I mean, the thing about MW3 Warzone is that, okay, when we got Urzikstan, I'm like, okay, I don't like it as much as Verdansk, I'd say, map-wise. I definitely like it better than Caldera, but I didn't like the map too much compared to Mazrah. So I was kind of mixed, right? I'm not, like, greatly in love with any of these maps here, to be honest with you. But
I agree, yeah.
MW3 Warzone seemed the least problematic. Again, he did it right, where Season 1, you got a BR map, made it feel like a fresh iteration. Essentially, like multiplayer, fixed everything from MW2. And then you had back-to-back seasons with Resurgence maps. You got Fortune's Keep and Rebirth that got brought back. And Fortune's Keep, by the way, the gold standard with Easter eggs, how to do that day one. I think that was fantastic. And then the rest of MW3's Warzone cycle was LTMs, good quality of life changes. So, like, it was a pretty, like, nonchalant kind of year for Warzone, I'd say. Like, although, yes, there was probably some performance optimization issues on certain platforms. I get that. The PR was a night and day difference compared to Warzone 2.0 Al Mazrah, right? Like, it was a much smoother experience. Yeah.
This sort of in conjunction with the post-launch support that MW3 got across multiplayer and the events, I think it was a pretty good time for Call of Duty, you know, fans.
Yes.
You know, again, the only real complaint I saw last year for Warzone were some things here and there, but obviously it was still going to be the cheaters, the cheating, Ricochet, anti-cheat Ricochet, which is an overarching thing, like I said, throughout all these iterations of Warzone, which I believe is for any game. I see. I go into any comment section, and people are like, "Oh, the cheating's so bad," or it's so. It seems like a lot of games need to get on top of it.
I just feel like the PR wasn't that tough for cheating. But go ahead, continue. I felt like it wasn't that vocal last year with MW3. Like you heard about it.
I agree.
But it wasn't every day.
Yeah. And I think something worth noting here is that there was actual big POI updates to Urzikstan.
Yes.
Which added some cooler areas, but they weren't actually added to the MWZ map, which is a little bit sad about. But that's important for the next iteration of Warzone. That where those POI changes came in. But yeah, all in all, MW3 it was a good year. And like I said, you can see the uncanny guy gets a little bit better, so they did something right.
Yeah, it's just it's just silly, right? Because DMZ being the focus of Warzone 2.0 initially, then for DMZ to stop getting support after like the 4th, 5th season for the most part. So it's like, okay, that means Warzone 2.0 Battle Royale like suffered almost for nothing. I mean, I'm a huge DMZ fan saying that as well, by the way. Like, it's just silly to look back at. Like, look at the mode that survived and the mode that didn't, and look at the mode that was focused on initially. What happened there? But also got to remember Vandal, which I think I'd prefer to play BR on over Urzikstan, to be quite honest with you. But it's cool that map got a little bit of love with both Resurgence and BR. That was kind of like sitting in between these. But we're not ranking Warzone maps here. Just bringing that up. That map also had some love during MW3 cycle, especially for the Haunting. Like, we saw some great updates. But then you get into what people are calling Warzone 4.0, the Black Ops 6 era of Warzone. Like I've said many times, if Season 1 would have dropped with a new Warzone map, people would have felt like we were in a new era for Warzone. Because you add Omni move into Warzone, we're talking, okay, a big night and day difference with how people are playing Call of Duty as we know it. When you're on the same map, Urzikstan, which by the way had every POI update reverted, because according to the studio, they started working on BO6 Warzone before MW3 Urzikstan got any POI updates, so those didn't roll over, which sucks. It didn't feel fresh for a lot of people. And also, like you mentioned earlier, they removed like some of the standard base perks you could spawn in with. So they stepped back
and
on some of the great.
Also,
that's another thing. They stepped back on some of the changes MW3 introduced, then added in progression with prestiging, which again has also been received. I think it's been a little bit of a mixed bag for Warzone specifically. BO6, yeah, it's classic progression, cool. But for Warzone, it's like, all right, you got to either waste the prestige token or just get to a certain level every time you hit a new prestige to have overkill, to have temper, to have whatever equipment you might use. So that comes a conversation about having maybe more than one token given to you every time you prestige. Discuss it for a different time. But Warzone inherited the non-existent footstep audio from BO6. That's the unfortunate part, is this again creates a discussion about Warzone needing to be in its own corner, not necessarily integrating with much apart from weapons every year. Because then when you start integrating even the base game's issues, that's again overhauling and resetting something that didn't need to be changed to begin with from the previous year, right? Audio being completely changed, like, dude, that's, I think, completely unnecessary. Brought back MW2 and 3 weapons and operators to increase MTX sales. I don't really get this.
Yeah,
I don't really understand. What does that point mean?
There's some good points in here, and then there's just some complete Reddit points that is just like that kind of hurt to read. Yeah,
like the argument is that they shouldn't have done carry forward to Warzone, but I don't really get that, because Warzone 1 had 3 games integrated. So as of right now, the current Warzone has 3 games integrated, a 4th possibly coming this fall with Black Ops 7. So I don't really get what that's even saying, because not really, I mean, I can't really think of too many MW weapons that are even viable compared to BO6 ones. There are a few, but either way, they always make those redundant anyway. They're just available in case you want to use your MTX. but
I just don't understand. This is in the Black Ops 6 section.
Yeah.
And it says that brought MW2 and MW3 weapons to increase MTX sales during MW3 life cycle. And it said, and then in brackets says, this will lead to a balance and Warzone integration nightmare and make the game feel repetitive to previous years. I don't really necessarily agree with that.
Is that not what Warzone 1 did, though? Like
exactly. Exactly.
So, I'm sure people were still using FFAR and like HDR all day, like while Caldera was out, right?
So this is a pure moment of the rose-tinted glasses. Warzone did the exact same. Warzone 1 did the exact same thing, right? But now it's listed as a bad point here. So
yeah, I think the biggest issue. Oh, go ahead.
I think the person just sort of maybe just worded what they wanted to say wrong. Maybe they wanted to say that they brought out MW2 stuff into MW3 to increase microtransaction sales. But during MW3 life cycle, that whole point doesn't make any sense. I can't make sense of it.
That's almost arguing against carry forward in the base game too. But whatever, that's a whole other.
Which there wasn't. Which there was no Black Ops 6. Yeah,
Black Ops 6 didn't. Right. Forward, yeah. MW3 did, but a big issue here, not having what is considered to be a finished experience Avalon. That's a big problem in my opinion, because like I said, you want it to feel like a Black Ops year. You want it to feel like a fresh iteration of Warzone. When you're bringing in the same map that we already had for a full year and you just slap ranked into that, it's like, okay, that gets old after a while. I think that was a big mistake because we already saw the Euro Mountains rumored Warzone map for Cold War that got cut as well. So that's 2 Warzone maps in a row that would have been released during a Black Ops year that were replaced by existing experiences. In this case, I guess you could say Verdansk, because Verdansk is coming back instead of Avalon. Area 99 was your Season 1 integration map for Resurgence. I swear that was like a fart in the wind for the Warzone community, because most popular and I'd say full-time Warzone creators play BR and they want to play ranked, and so Resurgence kind of just exists and sits there, maybe for tourneys, right? But obviously you have a lot more people. I think more casuals will probably play Resurgence, but I swear like the PR already wasn't great because of Urzikstan, and then you didn't have like, not that you need this, but you didn't have any creators kind of on the side of the studio saying, yeah, you know, new Warzone, because they're like, oh, there's no new map. They weren't going to play Area 99 anyway. So I think that was rough for PR. And obviously Area 99 being like a Nuketown Warzone map, having no Easter eggs, I mean, it lacks the aura that it deserves, because I think the map is great and plays well. So I think it's been rough to see, but the overarching theme here with cheaters, for some reason, I mean, which I didn't mention earlier, but it could make sense to bring up now, Ricochet got introduced with Warzone Caldera. I think was marketed a little bit too much, almost as this bulletproof shield. That I swear it was effective for a while. Because I don't remember seeing too much negative PR about cheating during like Warzone 2.0, really. Sometimes, but it wasn't that crazy. And obviously you're going to see more cheaters like in ranked experiences because of the status and leaderboards, right? Really don't remember seeing much about cheating during MW3 Warzone at all. I don't know what happened or what changed, but Black Ops 6's Warzone has been like hacked to hell, to the point where the reputation of the base game BO6, MP and Zombies, is almost stained because of a free-to-play experience. Like, that's crazy to think about. That if you have to take a Warzone only player, that person forever will be like, Black Ops 6 worst game. And they're like, wait, what do you mean by that? They're like, oh, Warzone. Yeah, they're talking about Warzone. But like, the PR and reception around Black Ops 6 has been hurt because of shit here, which is like unbelievable. Like, it's weird. A lot of very odd decisions were made. I can only guess maybe Raven's working on BO7 campaign, because it feels like Warzone took a backseat the last couple of months. Maybe because they're focused on Verdansk, I don't know. But time will tell in a few days when they reveal C3. And yeah, I'll leave it at that if you want to add anything else. That's Warzone 4.0 for people.
Yeah, you know, I feel like there's this chart, whoever made this chart might have to go back and update it after Season 3, because from what we're hearing, it seems like, at least in my understanding, it's going to be a pretty big overhaul and return to form, hopefully, of what people liked at the start of this chart here in 2020, where Mr. Incredible is very happy and animated. Hopefully we can get back to that Mr. Incredible with the Season 3 update, because
at least the Caldera face, at least this one. At least that one.
Yeah, not the current one where it's still a little bit deep fried. It's better, but yeah, you know, we've already heard the rumors of floating loot. That's going to be big, I think, even though that's such a like that doesn't really necessarily change the gameplay entirely. I get it, maybe it's a visibility thing, but I feel like with how the loot pops already, I'm sort of okay with it. But you know, whatever the community wants is, you know, maybe they'll be more happy with it. But floating loot rumored to return. We got a whole bunch of rumored weapons from Warzone 1, Kilo, AMAX, Growl, HDR. Right. Those are going to be fun to play with. But now we're already seeing today a whole bunch of people complaining, being like, this is a 90s game. Why is there 2010 weaponry in a 90s game? It's like, dude, stop, man. You'd
be complaining if they don't add those weapons when Verdansk comes back.
Exactly.
So just take it and hope for the best. Hopefully the Ricochet overhaul that people have been waiting for finally drops, and somehow it at least goes back to some type of protective state that it was in with Caldera, because I don't remember it ever being so weak during, you know, the end of Warzone 1 or even going into like MW3 Warzone. Ricochet apparently worked at one point, or was stronger than it was now. I don't know what's going on, but fingers crossed.
I feel like the Ricochet thing is when the community is upset about content or changes, that's when the Ricochet controversy flares up, being like, oh, this and this is wrong, and there's a lot of cheaters, and there's so many cheaters. I feel like that's something to tack on. That's like the cherry on top to be like, they just changed all this stuff. It sucks, and there's a whole bunch of cheaters. I feel like that's when the argument flares up. But
that wouldn't shock me considering the lack of content Warzone's gotten, especially season 2, which it got quality of life, but no actual like LTMs or map changes.
Which is
or
what
anything
people
like that,
wanted.
So.
People wanted them to stop updating the game so they could fix it. They stopped updating the game and fixed it, and the fixes are apparently terrible. So it's like the Warzone community is never going to be happy. I guess we're gonna see what the community is gonna look like after Verdansk. I don't think I want it to be good, but I feel like it's the Warzone community is the Warzone community, and I think you know exactly what I mean when I say that. So
yeah, hoping for the best, folks. I want to see Warzone succeed. But with that being said, that is the collapse of Warzone, according to this image. Pretty funny to actually go through this. Again, I wanted to make a video like this anyway, kind of going through each iteration. I think this sums up just about everything that we wanted to go ahead and break down. But with that being said, we will catch you all in the next one.